What beavers do is help slow down the flow of water and let it spread over the landscape so that they have deep enough water for habitat.
In September of 1989, a Bureau of Land Management biologist named Carol Evans photographed Suzie Creek, a stream running through Elko County in northeastern Nevada, and the picture she took looked like a photograph of failure. A thin sliver of water cut through a bare gravel bar. There was not a single willow, not a single sedge, not a scrap of shade anywhere along the banks. Decades of unbroken summer cattle grazing had stripped the creek down to its bones, and the stream that remained looked less like a living waterway and more like a ditch slowly drying out in the high desert sun. What happened to that same stretch of creek over the following 3 decades would turn into one of the most cited case studies in an entirely new approach to restoring degraded rivers across the American West. And the animal at the center of it was one that ranchers in the area had spent generations trying to get rid of: the North American beaver. To understand how bad things had gotten on Suzie Creek, and on countless streams like it across the Great Basin, you have to understand what cattle grazing had been doing to these waterways for over a century. Riparian corridors, the thin ribbons of vegetation that grow along stream banks, are the most productive and most fragile habitat in the entire high desert. Cattle are drawn to them naturally, since they offer shade, water, and the greenest, most palatable forage anywhere in the landscape. Left to graze along a stream all summer, every summer, for decades on end, cattle will eat willow and cottonwood seedlings down before they ever have a chance to establish, trample stream banks into bare dirt, and widen and flatten what were once narrow, deep, cold water channels into shallow, sun-exposed gravel beds. By the late 1980s, this was exactly the condition Suzie Creek and its neighboring waterway, Maggie Creek, were in. Beavers had once been common throughout this landscape, before European trappers nearly wiped the species out across the American West during the fur trade of the 1800s. Nationwide estimates put the pre-settlement beaver population at somewhere around 55 million animals. Where beaver populations survived into the 20th century, ranchers and land managers frequently still treated them as a nuisance, blamed for flooding pastures and cutting down trees, and often removed or killed on site. On a creek as degraded as Suzie Creek had become by 1989, the question of beavers barely applied. There was no willow left for them to eat, no woody vegetation to build dams from, and nowhere near enough water to sustain a colony. The stream had been degraded past the point where beavers could even survive there. In the early 1990s, Evans approached the family running the Maggie Creek Ranch, a nearly 200,000-acre operation whose grazing leases covered the land Suzie Creek ran through, with an unconventional proposal. Rather than trying to physically rebuild the stream channel using heavy equipment, the traditional and expensive approach to riparian restoration, what if the ranch simply changed when cattle grazed along the creek, resting it during the hottest months of summer when new plant growth was most vulnerable, and shifting cattle pressure to the spring and fall instead? The push to protect Lahontan cutthroat trout deserves its own explanation, since it was the original motivation behind Evans's grazing proposal, beavers aside. Lahontan cutthroat trout are Nevada's official state fish and the largest trout species native to North America, historically found throughout the Humboldt River drainage that Suzie Creek feeds into. Decades of habitat degradation, including the loss of shaded, cold-water stream, reaches exactly like the one Suzie Creek had become, pushed the subspecies onto the federal threatened species list. Cold, deep, well-shaded pools are essential trout habitat, and they are also precisely the kind of habitat beaver dams create as a natural side effect. Restoring the creek for trout and restoring it for beavers turned out to be essentially the same project, which is part of why the Grazing Rest program succeeded in unlocking benefits well beyond what its original planners had specifically designed it to achieve. It was a hard sell. The proposal meant real short-term costs and inconvenience for a working cattle operation, based on a benefit that would take years, not months, to materialize if it materialized at all. But the ranch agreed to try it, and the results, though slow, began almost immediately. In the first year after the grazing change, native grasses started returning to the stream bank. In the second year, flowering riparian plants followed. Riparian ecologists generally estimate that it takes somewhere between 8 and 12 years of sustained recovery for a degraded streamside plant community to rebuild itself to the point where it can support woody vegetation like willow and cottonwood at any real scale. By the early to mid-2000s, roughly a decade after the grazing changes began, Suzie Creek's riparian corridor had recovered enough that something nobody had explicitly planned for started happening on its own. Beavers began recolonizing the creek. Nobody released them there, no one trapped a family group from a nuisance site and relocated them to Suzie Creek as part of the restoration plan. The willows and vegetation simply grew back to a point where beaver habitat existed again, and beavers, dispersing naturally from other watersheds in the region, found it and moved in. Evans later described being genuinely surprised by this outcome, having designed the grazing rest program primarily to benefit Lahontan cutthroat trout, Nevada's state fish, rather than to attract beavers specifically. The beavers' arrival turned out to accelerate the restoration far beyond what the grazing changes alone would likely have achieved. It helps to understand exactly how beavers accomplish what they do, because the mechanism is deceptively simple. Beavers are triggered to build and repair dams primarily by the sound and sensation of running water, an instinct so strong that captive beavers have been recorded attempting to dam the sound of a speaker playing recorded stream noise. In the wild, this instinct drives them to fell small trees and shrubs, drag branches and mud into the stream bed, and pack the resulting structure tightly enough to slow or stop the current entirely. A single beaver family, typically a breeding pair along with young from the current and previous year, can build and maintain multiple dams along a single stream reach and will continue expanding and repairing that system indefinitely as long as suitable food and building material remain available nearby. Once established, the beavers began doing what beavers do best, building dams. Each dam backs up water into a pond, slows the stream's flow, and forces water sideways into the surrounding floodplain, rather than letting it rush straight downstream. Over time, a stream with a healthy beaver population develops into an entire complex of interconnected ponds and wetlands, rather than a single narrow channel, which does several things simultaneously for a degraded arid stream system. It raises the local water table since water held in ponds and spread across the floodplain has time to soak into the ground rather than draining away quickly. It reduces erosion since slower moving water carries less sediment and cuts less aggressively into stream banks. And it creates open water and wetland habitat that supports an entirely different community of wildlife than a bare gravel channel ever could. Researchers with Trout Unlimited later used satellite imagery and historical photographs spanning roughly 2 decades to quantify exactly how dramatic the transformation on Suzie Creek had been. Comparing conditions from the late 1980s and early 1990s to a 2013 survey, they found that riparian vegetation along the creek had expanded by more than 100 acres. The number of active beaver dams had grown from 0 to 139. The total area of open water along the stream had increased by more than 20 acres. A creek that Evans had photographed in 1989 as a bare gravel bar with no vegetation at all had become, over roughly 2 decades, a genuine wetland system supporting waterfowl, fish, and a wide range of other riparian wildlife. The timing of this recovery mattered enormously once drought returned to the region. During a severe multi-year drought spanning from around 2012 through 2015, streams throughout the Great Basin without established beaver populations saw flows drop dramatically or stop entirely. On Suzie Creek, the network of beaver ponds and elevated water table built up over the preceding 2 decades helped the stream continue flowing even through the driest years of that drought, providing a striking real-world demonstration of exactly the resilience benefit that restoration ecologists had been arguing beavers could provide. John Griggs, who was hired as a cowboy at Maggie Creek Ranch around 1990, just as the grazing changes were beginning, later became one of the more vocal ranching advocates for the beaver-driven restoration approach, having watched the transformation unfold firsthand over the following decades. His perspective mattered particularly within Nevada's ranching community, since skepticism toward beavers ran deep among cattle operators who had spent generations viewing them purely as a source of flooded pastures and damaged fence lines. Seeing a working cattle ranch benefit directly from the beavers' return, through more reliable water and healthier grazing land overall, carried weight with neighboring ranchers in a way that a biologist report alone might not have. The success at Suzie Creek was not an isolated case within the Elko district. Nearby Dixie Creek underwent a similar transformation following comparable grazing and habitat management changes, and by 2021, during yet another period of severe regional drought, Dixie Creek's beaver dams and recovered wetland vegetation were providing exactly the kind of dependable water source and wildlife habitat that neighboring beaver-free streams could no longer offer. Land managers across the district increasingly point to this pattern: degraded stream, restored vegetation, natural beaver recolonization, dramatically improved resilience as a repeatable template rather than a one-off success. The Suzie Creek story has since become a widely cited example within a broader movement in Western water management, one that treats beavers not as a pest to be trapped and removed, but as what ecologists call ecosystem engineers, a free, self-sustaining workforce capable of rebuilding degraded stream habitat far more cheaply and often far more effectively than heavy machinery and human labor alone. Land managers across Nevada and neighboring states have since incorporated beaver-friendly grazing management and, in some cases, deliberate beaver relocation from conflict sites into stream restoration plans modeled directly on what happened along Suzie Creek and neighboring Maggie Creek. Nevada's approach to managing beaver-human conflict has also shifted meaningfully as a direct result of these restoration successes. Where beavers causing problems in one location, flooding a road culvert, or a section of irrigated pasture were once simply trapped and killed, wildlife officials increasingly favor relocating conflict beavers to degraded stream sites that have been specifically prepared to receive them, sometimes using artificial structures called beaver dam analogs, human-built approximations of a beaver dam, to give a relocated colony a head start before the animals arrive. This approach recognizes what Suzie Creek demonstrated by accident. A beaver colony placed into suitable habitat can accomplish more large-scale stream restoration at a fraction of the cost than heavy equipment and human labor working alone. Nevada's experience was not happening in isolation. Around the same period, a broader movement, sometimes referred to informally as the Beaver Believers, was gaining traction across Idaho, Oregon, Washington, and eventually reaching restoration projects as far away as Scotland, all built around the same core insight: that a landscape's own native ecosystem engineers could often outperform expensive, human-engineered restoration equipment, provided they were given the basic conditions needed to survive and get to work. Researchers comparing outcomes across these different regions consistently found the same pattern that first showed up on Suzie Creek. Wherever streamside vegetation could be restored enough to support beavers, whether through changed grazing, temporary fencing, or deliberate relocation, the animals themselves went on to do most of the remaining restoration work for free, indefinitely, without further major investment. None of this happened quickly, and none of it happened the way a dramatic before and after photo might suggest. It took a biologist willing to make an unusual pitch to a working cattle ranch, a decade of patient grazing changes with no guaranteed payoff, and finally, once conditions were right, a species that had been driven to the edge of extinction across the American West more than a century earlier, quietly finding its own way back into a stream nobody expected it to return to. The mud and sticks came later. The real transformation started with rest. If stories like this one about the slow, unglamorous groundwork that makes dramatic ecological recoveries possible are the kind of thing you want more of, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.